Does this series need a name? Comment your suggestions down below. Ooh, yeah. Hello from my side of the screen. I'm Leah Mojo. Welcome back to my channel where I retell stories of the Bible while putting my makeup on. If you're ever interested to know what products I use on my face, I always link them down in the description box below. And if you're interested in knowing where I got my personal study Bible from, I also link that in the description box as well. As always, grab yourself a drink, make yourself comfy. But first, disclaimer. I am not a pastor, nor theologian, nor historian. I am simply a lover of Jesus and makeup. That's it. I encourage you to read the good book for yourself. If you have any questions or doubts, that just makes you human. Not here to change anyone's opinions, but I do hope that this series is life-giving and opens us all up to exploring and stretching our individual faiths whilst encouraging us to think outside of ourselves. Cool? I bet. Let's get into it. I cannot focus worth a darn today, okay? I can't focus. All right, last week we talked about so many things. So if you haven't seen last week's video, pause this, go ahead and watch that one, okay? We left off last week's video with God saving Ishmael from death and keeping him safe to grow into manhood. And also, there was a treaty made between Abraham and King Abimelech. Today's story will be coming from Genesis chapters 22 through 25. And it actually begins with Abraham being tested by God in a very difficult way. All right, so boom, Abraham, Isaac, and Sarah are a cute little family unit at this point. Remember, Ishmael is gone, he's grown, he's married, you know what I'm saying? It's really just Abraham, Isaac, and Sarah. Happy little family. So Abe is minding his business one day and God calls to him. And God is like, listen, Abe, I want you to take your son, the only son you love so dearly, and go with him to the region of Moriah. And I want you to sacrifice him to me as a burnt offering on the mountain that I show you. What? Now, I don't have kids, okay? But something tells me that if I did, that would be a rather difficult task. And what gets me is that the very next verse literally just says the next morning, Abe gets up, he loads his donkey, he gets 2 servants that he trusts, and he grabs his son Isaac, and they just prepare to make the journey to Moriah. It didn't even really give any details about the pain deliberation that Abe must have had with God. No fight, no questioning, no God, you tripping? No, am I sure this is God and not the devil? God, my God? The same God who promised Isaac to me wants to take Isaac from me? Nah, can't be the same God, can't be, I'm tripping. Nope, the Bible didn't go into any of those details. But I'm going to assume that this obedience on Abraham's part was not without extreme difficulty. So yes, early the next morning after Abe had gathered enough wood for his sacrifice, Abe, 2 of his servants, and his son Isaac, who was probably very unaware of what was supposed to take place that day, headed out for this mountain that God was supposed to show Abraham. So they traveled for 3 days and they finally arrive at the mountain that God had chosen. So Abe, trying to be all nonchalant, tells his servants, you guys wait here. You know what I'm saying? Wait here while Isaac and we're just going to go up that mountain and worship God. We won't be long. So his servants are like, okay, they have no reason to suspect that anything weird is going on. So Isaac and Abraham head up the mountain with all of the wood and supplies that they had prepared for this sacrifice. And the whole time, Isaac has no idea that he's the intended sacrifice. And while they're traveling, Isaac even asks his father Abraham, hey dad, so we have all the stuff for the sacrifice, but like, where the lamb at? Like, where's the actual... where the burnt offering gonna be at? And Abe responds, the Lord will provide the sacrifice, my son. Let's keep going. So they reach their destination and they start preparing the altar. And then Abraham takes Isaac and binds him to the altar. Now the Bible doesn't give details of what Isaac was going through at this point, but like use your imagination. why is my father binding me to this altar, bro? What's going on? Like, it probably clicked. Oh my God, I'm the sacrifice. I'm the lamb. And like, don't even get me started on Abe. Like, he was being obedient to God, but he was probably dying inside. Like, dude, he loved his son. This one kind of hurt me to read, not gonna lie, because, you know, just like following Abraham's story, you know how much Isaac means to him. I'm like, Lord, please, come on. Not Isaac. Not Isaac. So he gets him bound miraculously. And he had to be both like physically and emotionally strong to be able to complete this task. Like, not gonna lie, I probably wouldn't have been able to do it. I ain't even gonna sit here and lie to y'all. And Abraham grabs the knife that he brought to slaughter the lamb. Now, right before he could plunge the knife into Isaac's heart, an angel just stops him out of nowhere by calling to him from heaven. He's like, Abraham, wait. And Abe is probably like frozen, like so much adrenaline pumping through his blood, you know what I mean? But he answers the angel and he's just like, I'm here. Like, I'm here. What's up? What's up? And the angel says to Abraham, don't lay a hand on the boy. Don't harm him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from him your son, your only son. All right, pause. So 2 things. Thing 1, when I say fear God, I don't mean, oh my God, I'm scared. I believe the context of that is more like a very, very high reverence. The fear of God, as in God is the end all be all. He is the sovereignty by which I live my entire life. Thing 2, yes, we know that Abe had more than one son. He did have Ishmael, but Isaac carries the weight. He was the one that God gave them as a gift. Ishmael was a blessing, yes, but he was conceived through the manipulation of Sarah and her doubts about God being able to give her a son. So when the Bible says that Isaac is Abraham's only son, it just means that he holds the significance of the bloodline. Okay, I just wanted to clear those 2 things up. Back to the story. So Abraham is flooded with relief and probably a bunch of other strong emotions about almost having sacrificed his most beloved son. So he looks up and he kind of sees like a little ram in the bushes ahead of him, and it's like caught by its little horns in the bushes or whatever. And the angel was just like, okay, this is actually going to be your sacrifice. So Abraham gets the little lamb and sacrifices that as the burnt offering instead. Side note, I know Isaac was probably like, what in the heck? Are we just supposed to jump over all of this? You tried to kill me. I was just tied to the altar. I was finna be like, their relationship probably needed some serious healing at that point from then on out. Like, I know that if I was Isaac, I could have never just been alone voluntarily with my dad anymore after that point. Like, sacrifice for God or no. Period! 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 And that's why Mary had a little lamb. So Abraham named that mountain, the Lord will provide, because the Lord clearly did provide a sacrifice that wasn't Isaac. Like, yes, what a beautiful lesson. Drastic measures in my extremely humble opinion, but beautiful lesson nonetheless. Abraham was a different breed of obedience. I'm just saying. I'm seeing that throughout this man's story, and I am so not there yet. Oh my God. But God knew how much of a big deal this was. Like, God knew how Abraham's heart must have felt through that entire ordeal. So he called to Abraham again and he says, listen, Abraham, I swear on myself, I will surely bless you and I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars. You did not withhold your son from me. Basically saying that you were willing to do what I told you to do, even if it caused you to give up something that was your whole entire heart. And are we ready to talk about that? Like, are we ready to go there? Are we ready to address the moral of this story? Sacrificing your heart's desires because God said to give something up? Some of these stories are a little painful, okay? A little loud. But I digress for the sake of the story, okay? We're gonna move on. So Abe and Isaac returned to the servants who were patiently waiting for them as if nothing ever happened. And they all set off together to Beersheba. And it's important that I said together because the Bible said together. And after that ordeal, I know some of y'all would have ran away if y'all was Isaac, because I know I would have. I would have been like, I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm not going anywhere with you, Dad. Okay, so jump a couple years into the future. Isaac is older. He's got some bass in his voice, facial hair, muscles and all that. Now, with Isaac aging, we know that Abraham and Sarah were super old when they had him already. So naturally, life must end. And sadly, Sarah, Isaac's mother, passes around this time. And she lived to be 127 years old, so she had a long life, filled with adventure, really. Abraham mourns the loss of his wife and sister, low-key, if you've been following my stories. So Abe seeks out a burial place in the land that he's been living in, so the land of the Canaanites, the land that was promised to him and his descendants. Remember, Abe was not originally from there, so he felt the need to ask permission for land to bury his dead. So Abe speaks to some Hittite people who were native to that land, asking if he could purchase some land so he could bury Sarah. And the Hittites respond to Abraham like, yo, why are you even asking us? Like, you're royalty here. You could have your choice of whatever tomb you wanted and pick a good one. Pick the most elaborate tomb that you can find. None of us will refuse you, basically. Now, Abe is really grateful for this, and he has a particular burial site in mind, but the person that it belonged to was not there. And this person's name was Ephron. I hope I'm saying that right. It's either Ephron or Ephron. So Abraham puts in a request to the Hittites to please go ask Ephron if he can purchase this particular burial site that he has in mind for Sarah. So word gets back to Ephron, and Ephron is literally like, listen, Abraham, you don't even have to buy this from me. Like, I will just gladly give it to you. Like, he had that much respect for Abraham and Sarah. He's like, you can have the site to bury your wife. Matter of fact, you can have all of the land surrounding the site as well. The field and everything in it, you can have it. Now, Abraham is besides himself with gratitude, but he doesn't want to just take the land. He's totally willing to pay Ephron for it. Abe inquires about the price from Ephron, and Ephron tells him because he knows that Abraham is not just going to take it without paying for it, even as a gift. So they go ahead and make this transaction, and they make it publicly in front of all of the Hittite people. And Abraham ends up getting more land than he even thought he was going to get. Like, he gets an entire field to bury his dead. That's really sweet. So rest in peace to Sarah. All right, so Abraham is extremely old, as we already know, and he was blessed in basically every way. Like, the Lord had granted him pretty much everything that he told him that he was going to grant him. But Abraham still wanted one thing before he died, and that was to see his son Isaac get married. So Abraham was told that one of his relatives named Nahor had some children. So he calls for the servant that was tasked with finding Isaac a wife. And he's just like, all right, listen, I need you to swear to me on God that you will not let my son Isaac marry a Canaanite woman from the land that we live in now. You must get him a wife from my home country, and she must be a relative. And the servant is like, okay, cool. But like, what if I find him a wife and she doesn't want to come back here to live? Like, should I take Isaac and move him there? And Abe is like, no. Do not take Isaac back to that land. God promised me and my offspring this land, the land in which we currently live. So she has to come back here. But if for whatever reason she refuses, you're released from this promise, and I won't hold you responsible. You have to swear that you will not take Isaac from this land. So the servant and Abe make the oath that he will not take Isaac away from the land, and that he will find a wife who is from Abraham's homeland and also a relative in their family. But soon after the oath is made, the servant and a few other men load up some camels and prepare to head to the homeland of Abraham. Now, they were going to Abraham's relative Nahor's house, and I want to say that Nahor was Abraham's brother. Don't quote me though. So their servant reaches this town around evening time, which is typically the time where the women of the town would go and draw water from the wells for the evening and the next morning. So the servant strategically stops at a well for his camels, okay? And he's just like, okay, this is it. This is going to be it. This is going to be the moment where I choose a wife for Isaac. It's just going to be this easy. So he prays to the Lord, and he's like, Lord, make me successful today. Make it so that I can just simply say to a girl, please let down your jar so that I may have a drink. And she'll simply say, sure, drink up and I will water your camels. And it'll be that easy, Lord. let her be the wife that you have chosen for Isaac. And wouldn't y'all know, when he was finished praying, opens his eyes, and what do you know? A lovely young maiden is walking towards him with a jar in hand. Whole time I'm reading that like, okay, Leah, you got to pray more specific prayers because, Lord, I've seen what you could do for others, okay? So this young woman that was walking towards him with this jar, her name is Rebekah. And she just happened to be the granddaughter of Nahor, but he doesn't know this information yet. So the servant hurries over to her as she's filling her jar, and he's just like, excuse me, ma'am, beautiful evening we're having. Please let me sip some water from your jar. And Rebekah's like, okay, drink up. And when he drank, Rebekah added, oh, your camels must be so thirsty. Like, let me draw some water for them too. So the servant is just staring at her in awe as she's, getting this water for these camels. Like, yo, was it this easy? Was it this easy? Like, oh my God, this has to be her. I just have to make sure she's family, because if she's family, then this is definitely her. So he takes a gold nose ring and 2 bracelets out of his travel bag. And I'm assuming this was like a dowry equivalent or something back in that time, like to represent a proposal, either a dowry or like a wedding ring. So the servant was like, tell me, whose daughter are you? And she's like, my dad's name is Bethuel, and he is the son of Milcah. Mind you, Milcah is Nahor's daughter. And Nahor is, ding, 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 you guessed it, Abraham's brother. I'm hoping I'm getting the specifics of this family tree correct because it was a little confusing to read. So as the servant is gazing at her in wonder, like, oh my God, I found her. Rebekah is like, yo, it's late. I gotta get this water into the house. But she doesn't want to be rude to the servant or his men. So she's like, listen, we got some extra bedding. Like if you need a place to crash. And the servant's like, yeah, definitely need a place to crash. We've traveled a really long way. But he's so overwhelmed and just relieved that this is the girl that Isaac is going to marry. And it was that simple. Like the Lord answered his prayer just like that. So he bows his head in gratitude and he just begins to bless the Lord. And this is when he gives Rebekah the nose ring and the bracelets. So Rebekah, if she didn't already know that something big was happening, she knows now, like that she sees this jewelry. But she leaves the servant and she runs back home real quick to tell her family like what's going on. And Rebekah has this brother named Laban who sees that she's wearing this nose ring and these bracelets. And he knows how much of a big deal this is too. So he's like, whoa, hold up. Let me go suss out the vibe. So Laban runs out to meet the servant. And he's like, oh my God, like, don't just stand there. Make yourself at home. Come in. So once his camels are set, the servant comes inside. There's like food set out for him and his men. And the servant is like, wait. Before I eat, I have to tell you guys why I'm here. And he gives them all the details about the prayer that he prayed and how Rebekah all of a sudden just kind of popped up as soon as he was done praying. Now, the servant also mentioned that the wife for Isaac had to be willing to travel back to the land that Isaac lives in. So Laban and the other family members are just like, whoa, this is amazing. They just knew that this was the Lord's plan for Rebekah. And they're like, let it be so, that Rebekah is going to marry Isaac. Now, I have to say that this is how marriage contracts worked back in that day. Some of y'all are probably like, okay, but did like Rebekah even want this though for her life, Most of the time, marriages back then were arranged without the couple ever having even met. So boom, Rebekah and Isaac are engaged. Now, the servant was elated that it was this easy. So just like his master Abraham, he starts to worship the Lord. He brings out more silver and gold and blesses the family with it. So he spends the night there. His camels get to rest, everything. How sweet. So morning comes and the servant is like, all right, I need to be on my way so I can go tell my master the good news that I found Isaac a wife. And before he leaves, he has to make sure that Rebekah is all set to come with him. Now, maybe it's because they slept on it and they might have been feeling a tiny bit uneasy about it now. And they were like, maybe we decided this in haste. You know what I mean? Like, maybe this all just happened way too fast. Like, maybe Rebekah can just stay here a few more days before basically moving to a country that she's never been to. So the servant is like, well, I can't go back without her. And I'm not making this trip again, but I can't stay here for 10 days either. I really have to get back to my master. Basically saying like, trust me, she's going to be safe. I promise you she's in good hands. So Laban and the mom and the rest of the family are like, okay, well, We're still kind of uneasy about it, but let's just ask Rebekah how she feels. Maybe she's scared to go on such a long journey to a land that she's never been to before. And she's never really left her family for anything. So at least they thought to ask her, which I thought was kind of sweet. Most of the time in these days, young girls didn't have no options. You know what I mean? So they call for Rebekah and they tell her the situation. And they ask her how she feels about it. And Rebekah's like, yeah, I'll go. Bye. Shoo. Well, that was easy. Dang, I know y'all thought she was gonna hesitate and want to stay home. Nah. Rebekah said, I'm out. I'm getting married. So she gets all her stuff packed and they send her off with a blessing. And off she goes with the servant and all of his men. Now, Rebekah's nursemaid also accompanies her. You know, this was fairly normal back in the day, especially for a young virgin girl who's never traveled or been anywhere. So meanwhile, back at home, Isaac had come to pay a nice little visit to his family. Mind you, he was old enough that he had kind of left, you know what I mean? Like kind of gone his own way. So Isaac is walking out to the field to meditate or to like pray to God, right? But as he's walking out, he looks up and he sees these camels and like all these men and the servant approaching. And Isaac is just like, who that? You know what I'm saying? Like trying to get a better look at them or whatever. And Isaac probably just thought like, oh, you know, my dad's servant returned from whatever journey he was on. But then he peeps the silhouette, like a beautiful young maiden on the back of the camel. And he's like, oh, who is this? So from up atop her camel, Rebekah can see Isaac and kind of like lock eyes for a moment. So Rebekah is just like, oh my God. So she asked one of the servants who was close to her, like, who is that? Who is that? Who is that guy right there? Who is he? And the servant who she asked, like, probably looked at her and was just like, that's Isaac. That's him. So she like hurries up and covers herself with a veil. You know, she probably wanted to like be a little bit more like mysterious. You know what I mean? Also, this is the first time they're seeing each other or meeting each other, period. So having the veil was historically appropriate for that time. So before Isaac and Rebekah even speak to each other, the servant rushes to tell Isaac the entire story of how he found Rebekah, how the Lord basically highlighted her and like pulled this entire thing together. So Isaac, he's now aware that this woman is going to be his wife. So he goes up to her. She's still got the veil on, so he doesn't really know like too much of the details of her face, but he helps her off the camel. I wish it had been a horse because it sounds way more romantic, but whatever. And he brings her into the tent of his late mother. And this is where he married her. So he pulls the veil off and he sees her and he's just floored by her beauty. Shawty a little baddie, she my little boo thing. And it was so sweet because the Bible actually says that marrying her in the tent of his late mother brought him comfort. You know what I mean? Because he had just lost his mom and she wasn't there to watch her little boy get married. And I'm like, oh, good for them. You know what I mean? So I want you guys to keep that happy ending energy because we have to conclude today's story with a little bit of a sad tip. Our patriarch, Abraham, he passes in chapter 25. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He did live to be super old, like 175 or something like that. Now, it does say after the death of Sarah that Abraham takes other wives, concubines really, and he had a good amount of children through them. But Isaac was always the son. Abe left absolutely everything he owned to his son Isaac. Now, when he was alive, he would give gifts to his other children that he had with these concubines and other wives of his. But he always ended up sending them away to live elsewhere, kind of like he did with Ishmael, so that nobody would be getting any big ideas, okay? This land, okay, belongs to Isaac. Alas, Abraham was buried with his wife Sarah, and it was Ishmael and Isaac that buried him. The end of an era. We'll get into the lineage of Isaac and Rebekah in the next video. And that is the end of today's story. We had a love story, a wedding, some deaths, but a wedding, a new beginning. And we said goodbye to Abraham and Sarah. I feel like I really know them. You know what I mean? We went through a lot with these guys. That about wraps up today's Bible story and this makeup look. Too bad this video wasn't dropping on Valentine's Day. It just didn't line up with the dates. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't do this one first because then y'all would have been mad lost last week. But I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. Be sure to like this video if you like this video and subscribe for more content. Follow me on Instagram because that's where I be at. And I'll see you guys soon for next week's video. Okay, love you. Bye.